Hi and welcome to the Matka Chai, another episode. And it's a pleasure for me in many ways because I have my classmate from my PUC here, Sheshgiri. Welcome, Sheshgiri, to the final side Matka Chai.
Hi, Prithvi. Pleasure. The pleasure is mine. Little did
Yeah,
we know
so,
that we would end up like this. I think
yeah,
when we
little
met
did
in
we know.
1985.
1985, yeah. So it's nice to catch up like this because you've been so busy, difficult to find out what you're doing. So I think for all our friends who all keep asking me, Sheshgiri ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ? I said we will chat on Matka Chai. Probably you will figure out. I think
Well,
that's a better way to
wonderful.
do it.
Absolutely.
So I have my Matka and my chai.
I just finished my
Yeah, good.
mug coffee, of course.
So as a little intro about the Matka Chai, this is basically a conversation space that I've created because everything is online, everything needs to go online. But we didn't want to take arts teaching online because
Mhm.
arts is all about energy, and energy happens when people are together. Online arts, you can do a lot of stuff, but not online classes. So we said, okay,
Correct.
we will do one thing, we will talk to artists. Now, how do we categorize artists? Singing, dancing, music? No.
Right. The
Artists are
traditional categories. Yeah.
many ways, and writers. There are, every single person for me is an artist who's dealt with life in many ways. And we have a lot of people who are going to pop in, say hello, comment, give questions. I'm going to pop up some questions. Already it started. So we have
Oh,
one more
Atif.
classmate.
Oh, wow. Atif. Wonderful.
Seeing you after a long time. Yes, maybe after the 12th.
First
Yes.
time after 12. Yes, absolutely, Atif. It's a
Yeah.
delight.
So, for all of us here, we people who have interacted with you, work with you, know a little bit of you. We will come to the fun parts of it also if somebody pops in and talks about our college life. But we will also have a lot of people because your profile is so interesting, and you have those magic words of UNICEF, and a lot of things that is there around. A lot of
Right.
people have bring me back saying amazing profile. So let's start with your journey from childhood to how you are where you are. All
Oh,
yours now.
wow. Okay, great. I hope I don't end up boring you all with this.
I'll cut you short if it is boring. Don't worry.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please feel free to do that. Um, and thank you for this opportunity. I think I must say that I was looking at the episode that you did with Kedarnath, who's another classmate of ours, and Guitar Kedar, as we called him, Guitar Rajesh, Guitar Kedar. So I also picked up a little about this wonderful name that you've thought, the finer side. I think it's a great name, and I'm waiting to come to Bangalore and have a look at the entire space and immerse myself in it. So congrats for doing that, and thank you for bringing me onto this discussion. So I did I studied in Baldwin Boys, as you know, and then we met at Vijay Junior in 1985. 87 we moved out. So I had the opportunity of getting into engineering at that time. So, I mean, I think that was, I remember our lecturers in Vijay Juna saying, 95 male ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ you end up becoming a doctor, ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಕಡಿಮೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ engineering. So anyway, that was the story then. I did my engineering from Ramia and graduated in 1991, right? 2 years in the industry. I was working. The last job that I had was with a company called Massey Ferguson, Tafe Massey Ferguson, which manufactures tractors. So I was actually an assembly engineer, working on the shop floor, manufacturing tractors and so on. But something in me was, not very happy, and I was close to breaking point at that time. I was asking myself, am I going to spend my entire life doing this? Because sometimes the night shifts were a killer, and the work itself was not something that was attractive, exciting. It was not drawing the best from me. Uh, so I think one fine day I just walked into my general manager's room and I said, "Look, I'm moving. I'm quitting." So he said, "Yako, I mean, why are you escaping?" Those were his words.
Yeah.
And what do you want to do? I said, "Look, I don't know, but I know one thing, that I don't want to do this." So I said 50% of my problem is solved. The other 50%, let's sort it out. So over, I think, a period of a lot of churning, around 92, early 93, I finally decided that I want to teach. I wanted to become a teacher. uh,
Okay.
Somewhere, the idea of becoming a teacher was very appealing, because I felt that it's something that, being a teacher enables you to keep learning, and there is never a dull moment. Of course, the fact that many adults kill the teaching profession is another story altogether. But then I thought I had the skills in me, I had the passion, and as a young person, of course, I wanted to change the world through education. So there was that great sense of idealism, and that's how I entered, education. I taught in the Valley School, which is a very progressive school in Bangalore, part of the Krishnamurti Foundation, and so on. So to cut a long story, in fact, I went back to, Tafe a few months later, when I was actually teaching, and I met Nijagal, the manager, and I
Okay.
said, "I'm not running away from life." I had formulated a response in my head. I said, "I'm not running away from life. I'm running into life, and you had got it totally wrong." Then he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I've become a school teacher and I'm enjoying every moment of it. I'm having fun." Right. So, to cut a long story short, it's been almost 30 years now. I'm in the 30th year of my work in education. And I think I've been extremely lucky, because I've been a teacher, I've worked with civil society, I've worked in some of the remotest and most beautiful parts of our country. I've done stints with international organizations. I've freelanced. I've worked with the government of India, and of course, UNICEF has happened. UNICEF happened in 2010, so it's been more than 11 years now within the organization. So
But
that's
you,
that.
you just mentioned that teaching. Yeah, I mean, I have also been a teacher, and my age group was the most joyous age group in one way, because uh, 3 years to 6 years, man,
Absolutely,
that's like
absolutely, and the
divine.
most difficult, one of the
Most
most
difficult,
difficult,
but most enjoyable also.
most enjoyable. Yeah,
Because the questions are easy to answer. You don't need too much
absolutely.
intelligence like you, and you've been dealing with a lot of people up to the 12th standard, and I have seen
Yeah,
the
listen,
values.
my work spans from 0 to 18. In fact, we've done a lot of amazing work in what is now called as the under threes,
Yeah.
because a lot of people within the education community or the child development community believe that the first 3 years are extremely critical in terms of what we do with children. So
Yeah.
there's some very fascinating experiences I've had in that area as well.
So you also
Yeah.
mentioned that you've gone to the remotest places and worked. Name some. Tell us where, what did it involve?
Okay, so I think, I mean, I'll start with Chhattisgarh, because that's also a substantive experience in my life. In Chhattisgarh, I've done a lot of work in the Naxal affected areas, for instance. So anybody who's been to Chhattisgarh, uh, south of Bastar, will know what kind of a place it is. It's amongst the most beautiful places in the country. But then that beauty hides certain very, very disturbing and very violent truths. It's been the site of, a civil war for several decades now. So I've been in places like Dantewada, in Sukma, in Bijapur, in Narayanpur. I've had my encounters with people we call as the Naxals, and I've crossed the streams. I've walked on road. We've done everything. As UNICEF, of course, being a large humanitarian organization, we've tried to look at how to provide schooling in places like that. So that's one example of what I would call as a very remote and difficult and challenging place to work in. The other place where I've enjoyed a reasonable amount of exposure and experience is Kargil. So,
Cargill. Okay.
Kargil, yes. So I was invited, I think in 2006, I was invited by the Ladakh Hill Development, Autonomous Hill Development Council in
Okay.
Kargil. So the Ladakh is usually associated with Leh for many people, because that's a touristy place. But
Yeah.
the Ladakh region includes Kargil as well, which
Yeah.
is less known, but then very infamous in terms of the Kargil conflict of '99 and so on.
That's
That's an
still a beautiful
amazing.
place.
It's
Beautiful
an
place.
amazing. It's an out of the world place, Prithvi. I don't know if you've been there, but if
I've
you
been
haven't,
there.
you
I've
should.
been there. It's a
Okay.
shrine. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a shrine. Yeah.
Somewhere, it's very strange, but whenever I've been to Kargil, I've always had this very intense feeling that I've been there before. I've spent my perhaps some other life there. And people, in fact, over a period of time, I made many great friends in Kargil. So I had to work with the education department in Kargil because they said there was this person called Karbalai who was the chief executive counselor of the Hill Development Council. He said, "Look, you're coming from Bangalore. That's why I've got you here because I want schools in Kargil to be like schools in Bangalore. अब
Wow.
बस वो करा दो हमारे लिए." He himself had been a teacher, but then he had risen to the post of the chief executive council, and that's an elected body. The Hill
Okay.
Council is elected. So I worked there for about 15 months. I've been there through all the seasons, working in minus 24, minus 25 degrees and going to some really amazing places. Just for people who are listening in Kargil, the dry statistic about Kargil is that its population density is 8 persons to the square kilometer. So you can imagine how much you can go for days together in some of the blocks of Kargil without meeting a human being.
Without meeting people.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
without meeting anyone for that matter. So, and of course, the third place which I would like to point out is Andaman and Nicobar. I've done some very interesting work there as well. That was in the aftermath of the tsunami. I went there as a researcher to understand how the tsunami had affected young children in those islands. So, amazingly beautiful. It's also an incomparable place, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Place wise, yes. So all these things, because the Sheshgiri I know is here, we can almost, we could have put him in the bracket of a nerd. I think if Atif is listening, he will probably vouch and say yes, yes, yes. Uh,
hey,
because
come
if
on!
we
I
had
was
a,
I was not amongst the toppers in the class or something. What are you saying?
no, it's not needing to be a topper. It was more
Right.
about having the answers. Apart from one book which you picked in the bookstore, the rest of the books you had the answer. So
Right.
let's not name those books, but yes, uh, keeping that tradition going.
Yeah.
There is a very difficult thing that you did. I think there are a couple of comments which I would like you to go through so that yes, what you've been up to for so long. Yes, he's been talking about it. Oh, brilliant sessions, PB. Thank you, Arvind.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
What an interesting
I think
life.
you
Yes,
have been instrumental. I think I don't know. I mean, I know this is going off the script a bit, but what I really admire is how you brought people together and how you continue to do that. That's amazing.
people together.
Yeah,
My energy comes from people. So I have
absolutely
to recharge my batteries. I have to meet more people. So if to
correct.
meet more people, I have to make sure that they are all in touch with each other. Yeah, that's
Absolutely,
the only
absolutely.
secret. That's the only
Yeah,
secret.
yeah.
Yeah, but this Matka chai is about you, so we'll just stick to you for now.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
So I remember this book that you wrote and sent to me. And first of all, it is maths and the college textbook, school textbook ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀನು ಮ್ಯಾಥ್ಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಬುಕ್ ಬರ್ದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು you have authored a book on maths and you sent it. I said, wow. Tell us about that book. Tell us this feeling of being an author because it's so difficult for us to put together words on paper and then take it to a publisher. What
Right.
process? When did that happen? Why did that happen?
Okay, very, very interesting questions. I've been writing, I think, since the mid 80s, but mostly for myself and for a few close friends. And those days when I used to take a small, an ink pen and a few sheets of paper and very neatly write down stuff. So I have articles that I've written from the early 80s, even today. The pages are fraying a little, but then they're there. Uh, Once I came into education and started immersing myself, doing various kinds of things in it, very late, in fact, sometime in 2011, 12, I realized that we haven't written much about teachers. I've had a great teacher about which the book is, based, about whom the book is based. and there must be a lot of good teachers doing wonderful work across the country, but why are they not getting the visibility? Why are they not being featured? Why is not anyone writing narratives and stories about them? So I think that was my leading question, and suddenly it occurred to me that I had this wonderful, amazing, I mean, you can use any adjective to describe him, teacher called Chanakeshwar. uh, in fact, Prithvi, if you have the time, we should go and meet him sometime. He stays in
Surely,
Banshankari,
definitely.
Banshankari second stage in Bangalore, well into his 80s, but then very sharp. So he brought mathematics alive for me in high school in Baldwin Boys. And how did he bring it alive? He told stories. So most maths teachers, at least the mediocre ones, get to the formulae very quickly. They say things like, and you may have heard this in your math classes: if a power x equals y, then x equals log y to base a. Madrapa ide logarithm. That's how it's done. But this gentleman used to tell us a lot of stories about why we were studying what we were studying, who did it, what was the journey of that particular concept. And I think those stories stayed with me. So much so that when I started thinking about him and writing about him in 2012, I wrote an article of 15 pages because I remembered so much. And I think with great teachers, you don't remember the small things, but you remember the stories that they tell. So it also
Yes.
goes to show why storytelling is so important in teaching learning as such. So that article got published. In fact, it got published on the MHRD website. There's an online magazine there. But then a few of my friends said, why don't you make it a lot more conversational? Why don't you make it a lot more simpler for people? Solpa, put some illustrations there. And so when I started thinking about these things, that entire article became a book. So each section of the article became a chapter. But then I realized that to convert it into a book, I had to work a lot more harder.
Yeah.
So I had to add a lot more. I had to research a lot more. So I went about this task of connecting with my schoolmates from Baldwin Boys, and I located my seniors who were taught by Mr. Chanakeshwar way back in 1969, right down to 1999, my juniors. So in this 30-year span, I found some 20, 25 guys who were willing to talk about this wonderful teacher of ours. I got
Wow.
a lot of interest from them, and I devoted two chapters to those interactions, right?
Interesting.
And I think it is, you go out into the market, you find very, very little on teachers. When a teacher commits a crime, when a teacher abuses a child, that becomes big news. But the teacher who's quietly pegging away in one corner and doing some great work, so I think that was the inspiration for me. And for a math book, it's been doing pretty well. And I think you should shed all your inhibitions and sink your teeth in it, because it's a very simple book.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I will brave myself into the book one of these days now. Since you have explained it, it's easier. For me, I just took it a couple of pages. I said, oh, too much maths. Okay, I'll come back to this later. But yeah, interesting. So we have a friend here who I was actually planning there's Khyati Tiwari, and she
Khyati is
letting
a
out a
colleague of
secret
mine,
about
and
you.
she's let off a secret.
Yes. So we
Khyati
all
is a
know
very
that
dear colleague
you
of
sing
mine from
very
the
well.
Hyderabad office. Yeah.
We will make sure that you sing a little later. But yeah, uh, on another note, there are a lot of educationists who are sitting here watching. There are people who work with children. There are people who work with destitutes, girls. I'm sure many of them are watching here. Uh, I have one such person who's there in our studio, and I'll be bringing her up now, more to understand uh, what do these things mean? UNICEF, WHO, WHO. I mean, for us, it's just names, yeah. But being inside there, how how can associations or schools benefit from institutions or organizations or names like this? I'm going to pull in Jacinta.
Mhm.
Jacinta, are you here? No, I don't think she's visible. So we'll wait for her to stir around. But
Sure.
yeah, probably you can explain to us if there is actually something that UNICEF can do for a lot of these schools which are working, because we don't really go beyond our education department.
Right.
We
Right.
are scared. We are scared of government. We are scared of bodies coming in. What are they going to
Right.
find? Will they close our school? These are the fears that goes on.
I think
I
no
think
one knows it better. You run Roots Montessori, so I'm sure you've had your encounters
yeah, yeah,
with people. Yeah. Okay, so I can say very different things about UNICEF, but then, in a nutshell, uh, we are the largest agency of the United Nations. So the United Nations is a big umbrella organization. It's got all kinds of, I mean, it's got the United Nations Secretariat. It's got these agencies like UNICEF, UNDP, UNESCO, uh, and so on and so forth. WHO is part of the UN system. The World Bank is part of the UN system. But UNICEF works in 190 countries. It's the largest UN agency for children. And it started off as I mean, earlier definitions of UNICEF were that where we used to go like this: United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund.
okay,
But then those responses were rooted in humanitarian context at that time. Later on, when one moved on from the emergency roles, the nature of what UNICEF also did, changed quite a lot. So we started focusing a lot more on development and not just emergency response. So
yeah,
we are now called as the United Nations Children's Fund. So what do we do? I mean, we our job as a UN agency, we are mandated to talk to governments worldwide to you know do the best that they can for children. I mean, in a nutshell. So every government, you know uh, on this earth has policies, programs, legislations for children. So the question is, are these policies designed well? Are they reaching children? Are they being implemented properly? How can they be made better? What is the evidence that a particular program, has been working very well? Uh, and what should our advice to the government be? So we work very closely with the governments. In my case, I've been working with education departments all my life. So uh, and when I talk about the education department, it goes all the way from the secretary of education, sometimes principal secretary, down to the teacher. So that's the entire span that we have. We also work, we also advocate a lot of things with the political parties. We don't take sides. The only side that we take is that of the child. So whether it's a BJP government or a Congress or a whatever government, the battles that we fight are with the governments in terms of trying to get them to understand what more needs to be done for children, whether it's the youngest child, I mean, whether it's a very young child below 6 years. And off late, UNICEF has also been doing a lot of work with adolescents, with youth, and so on and so forth. So I think that would be uh, uh, further. I'm just one thing I want to add. If someone were to ask me what do I do in UNICEF as education specialist, uh, in a nutshell, I just bring the right people to the right place at the right time to do the right things. I know it sort of sounds very simple, but then I'm a facilitator. I can't be everywhere doing everything. I can't be training all the teachers or Anganwadi workers of Karnataka or Andhra or whatever it is. But then I have it in my job to bring the best people that I know across the country and get them to meet the government, get them to offer what they have, challenge them to do something better, and create this great synergy that is needed. So I facilitate partnerships. I reach out to many organizations across the country, and in fact, I'm in Vijayawada now doing some very exciting work with what are called the Atal Tinkering Labs. So these are tinkering spaces in
tinkering
secondary
labs.
schools.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Tinkering labs, yeah. So they are set up by the Niti Aayog under what is called the Atal Innovation Mission. So we are trying to work with the government of Andhra to improve these labs, because what has happened is the vendor has supplied the equipment of worth of 20 lakhs to these schools, and they're just lying there.
well, nobody
So we are
knows what
trying
to
to
do.
get them on boxes. We are trying to get them to see what a tinkering lab should look like. And of course, there are big words associated with all of this: design thinking, problem solving, creative thinking, blah, blah, blah. But then we are trying to operationalize all those big terms in terms of activities and stuff. So, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it all sounds very simple, but then it's very it's very challenging, even as it is very exciting, and it can be very frustrating at times. Because
Yeah,
working
I mean,
through government,
I understand one part is bringing in a teacher to remote spaces itself is a difficult, activity. Not many
absolutely
people would want to come and be part of that. Very few selfless individuals will be ready to. I
true,
think I
true.
should give a hats off to your family members because they have just let you go, do what you want.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're watching. I mean, I'm not sure if they're watching this, but yes, hats off to Savita, my wife, and my kids for bearing with all this. And in fact, Savita jokingly tells me that, look, you leave all your educational theories outside the door when you enter a house. ಏನು ಒಳಗಡೆ ತಗೊಂಬರ್ಬೇಡ. Just come there as Giri and, let's have a nice day.
Interesting, interesting. So Jacinta is still around. I'm just trying to see.
Okay.
Hi, Jacinta. Are you able to see us?
Yeah, I'm able to see y'all, but I'm barely able to hear. So I went off camera so that I could listen, without using my speakerphone. Am I audible to you? I don't know
Yeah,
if I
very
am.
clearly. Very
Very
clearly.
Oh,
You
much.
can
really?
continue.
Then I guess something is wrong at my end. I'm not able to hear you very clearly. But let me two things, Giri, that I'd like to do, in this conversation. One is tell what we are attempting, and then, seek your help in terms of advice. If you could really give us some time, because we'd like to see how we could do this better. We are
Mhm.
just a 2.5-year-old NGO, not even 2.5, just 2 years old. We got inspired by the question of a school principal. I studied in a government aided school who asked me, can you teach my girls hope? She said, I can teach them everything else, right?
Mm.
Subjects, this, that, curriculum. I can do all of that. But can you teach us hope? So, in the process, we ended up speaking to Professor Rick Miller, who's worked for 30 years in the space of hope. And today we're more, invariably convinced that, hope is probably a very important life skill for children to learn, and in fact, adults to learn also. Yeah, okay. And we work with
Absolutely.
girls from 8th standard and upwards. We start with one school this year. Maybe we'll go to about 10 schools. Childcare institutions where children are rescued. Then the third program is children who complete 12th standard. We give them a scholarship and get them to go to college. Now, two
Right.
things that we realize is in the ecosystem of hope, parents and teachers play a big role. We are still an outside party in some ways, right? You have to change a school into a hope school. A home into a hopeful home. And I know every home is a very difficult task, but at least every school being a hope school is what we wanted to attempt. And
Hmm.
it's in that context, Giri sir, if I could get some time to speak to you, or understand how do we embed this in every school, and hopefully in every teacher. We are attempting our own models, right? I'm sure most of it is really what we've learned by experimenting, and today a little bit of confidence that this is probably something that can be scaled, and taken to different places.
Right.
And hopefully this year we'll also go outside of Bangalore urban,
Okay.
into places like Madurai and Dindigul and all that, and see how this program works. In changing lives over there. That's the context. And my humble ask is really, we need somebody like you to look at us critically and say, what the hell are you guys doing? Or maybe you got to do this, or do something else, or there's somebody else who's doing this. Why don't you leverage their strengths? That would really be my ask. And I will go off cam because otherwise I can't hear your response. Okay, so then I'll
Sure.
put you. I'll get close to listening to you. Thank you
Sure.
so much, Giri, and thank you, Prithvi. Thank you so much.
Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Jacinda. I mean, first of all, I must congratulate her for something as audacious as this and as hopeful as that. I think the closest that I can think of right now is some of the work that the Delhi government has done with the happiness curriculum. And I think hope and happiness are probably cousins of each other, so they're very close. Uh, some of these elements that, like hope, happiness, and so on, are least explored in the schooling experience and curriculum because it's so fixated on uh, competencies, achievement of learning levels and outcomes, and also the measures, are also very extremely limited. I mean, one is, of course, our exam itself is measuring something very narrow. It's more like a filtering device. But then I'm really happy to have met Jacinta, and I would like to visit, your school, Jacinta, and see what you're doing. And I'll take your contacts from Prithvi the next time I'm in Bangalore. I suppose, without really understanding what you have been doing so far, I suppose probably the most effective way of doing these things is through creating experiences. It cannot be, I mean, Prithvi, you would remember when we were in school, we had moral science, moral education classes, and they were amongst the most entertaining but boring at the same time. Because the teacher would just drone on and on and on. At the end of the day, what is the moral of the story? So nobody seemed to believe that the children could take multiple meanings from a particular story and juggle around with that. So I suppose it's in the doing of certain activities that we can actually integrate some of these very, very critical elements. And perhaps, Jacinta, the challenge would be to look at hope and happiness and see how we can really make those schools a lot more vibrant. I know it takes a lot of hard work, but I really admire you for what you've started, and I'm very curious to see what you're doing.
So my thoughts for Jacinta is, as long as you've started hope, don't worry. Everything will fall in place. People will come in place. Funds will come in. Everything will happen. Just continue what you're doing. Don't give up hope.
Absolutely, absolutely, very well put.
Yeah. Okay. So, Giri, Jacinta, sorry, you're not on screen. In case you are listening, I hope you got the gist of it. I'll probably, connect you to Sheshgiri, and you can meet him, talk to him. Maybe he'll visit you when he comes into Bangalore. Okay. Now, coming back to Giri. Giri, there is an interesting activity of your singing that people are talking about. So,
Okay.
I surely, for me, you're a different artist. Artists, everybody. I know that there are so many doctors who sing. There are so many, engineers who actually sing very well. But unfortunately, they're all known as engineers or doctors. But I know that you started as
SP Balasubramaniam was different. Of course, I think he dropped out of engineering, if I'm right.
yeah. So before you actually get into your one or two songs, which you can prepare, I want to show what we are doing at the final side so that you and everybody who's watching has an idea. I'll just take you off the screen. Me also.
Wonderful to see this venue come alive. The sound was great, acoustics were great. Thanks a lot to the finer side.
I mean, what can I say about this place? It's such an inspiration for all artists like me, and I feel like coming and again and performing here.
Great place, great vibe, great people. ಈ ಜಾಗ ಈ ತರ ಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ದೊಡ್ಡದಾಗಿ ಬೆಳಲಿ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಆಶಿಸ್ತೀನಿ.
ಬಹಳ ದಿನಗಳಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಜಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಆ ಜಾಗದ ಹೆಸರು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ, ದಿ ಫೈನರ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ತುಂಬಾ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಜಾಗನ ಬಿಲ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
This beautiful auditorium, it's very inspiring to see how it has been designed for the sake of arts.
ಚಿತ್ರ ಬೆಳ್ಳಿ ಕಟ್ಟು ಬಂಗಾರ ಬಣ್ಣದ ರೂಪ ಚಿನ್ನ ಬೆಳ್ಳಿ ಸೇರ್ಕಂಡಾಗೆ ತನ್ಗಂಗೆ ರೂಪ
बहता है मन कहीं Hi everyone. It was a lovely music evening and I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm looking forward for many such lovely programs. Thanks to TFS, and I'm hoping to be coming here again and again.
Lovely.
Well, that's a bit of the final side. Just to get into the mood to sing. So, what songs can we hear from you? We have about 10 minutes, so you have at least 2 to 3 songs which you can start humming.
Well, there is no, there's no accompaniment, so you'll have to just bear with me for that. Uh, I normally sing
Enjoy.
old Hindi film songs,
Yeah.
and I also love singing old Kannada film songs as well. But most of it is old, so uh, I hope people who are listening and seeing this will be fine with that. So just to kind of put a little bit of the story there, I was part of the school choir for some time in Baldwin's. They used to call me a lower voice because I couldn't take the soprano and the descant and all of that. And we had a wonderful music teacher called J.T. Williams. He could play at least 15 instruments, and
Wow.
he's an amazing teacher, very creative person. So sometime I think in my 10th or 11th, I realized that I had this great interest in old Hindi film songs, and used to, of course, most of the time sing in the bathroom. But then it so happened that one of those bathroom sessions, I attempted a Kishore Kumar yodel, and I found that I could actually yodel like Kishore Kumar. So at
Nice.
that point in time, he became my king and my hero. So from there, it's been most of the time it's entertaining friends. I have a channel, as you're aware, Prithvi, no frills channel. It's called Giri's Adda, where I do my songs, and I try and
And this is on
you know
YouTube.
this is on YouTube, Giri's Adda, Giriz Adda, and I also do some books. I host some conversations, though not as regularly as you do. So, in fact, maybe one of these days I'll drag you across to Giri's Adda and we can.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so right now maybe I can sing a little bit, if not the whole song. I can sing a little bit of little part of the song called Jumru. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's 1956. Kishore Kumar, who is Jumru in the movie, and this is how it goes. Ooh, मैं हूँ झुम 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 झुमरू फक्कड़ घूमू बन के घूमू मैं ये प्यार का गीत सुनाता चला मंजिल पे मेरी नजर मैं दुनिया से बेखबर बीती बातों पे धूल उड़ाता चला ओ टेड़े योड़े बकायो का बका ओ टेड़े मिनी 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 योड़ले बगालूगा बगा ओ टेड़े ओड़े.
Superb. Yeah. Apart from this, I know that there are some very soulful, very nice, silent, reminiscing songs which also you love singing. So, can we hear one of those?
Yeah, I know you've sent me some messages saying that your songs are best suited for scotch, rum, whiskey, one evening, just go to sleep. Yeah, okay, so again from Jumru. In fact, Jumru had this, it was all black and white, right? 1950s black and white movies. Jumru was a movie where I think Kishore did a lot of things. Kishore Kumar sang, he composed, he acted. I mean, he did everything. So another song from Jumru, which is at the other end of the spectrum as compared to Jumru. Jumru is all about, uh, without any inhibitions, a complete uninhibited expression of, feelings, love, and this and that. So the other song is equally, intense, soulful, and all the stuff that you want over a cup of beer, which is
Oh,
like
I've got chai here.
you got chai, wrong combination. Hey, 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 hey. कोई हमदम न रहा, कोई सहारा न रहा, हम किसी के न रहे, कोई हमारा न रहा, कोई हमदम न रहा, कोई सहारा न रहा। शाम तन्हाई की है, आएगी मंजिल कैसे, शाम तन्हाई की है, आएगी मंजिल कैसे, जो मुझे राह दिखाए, वही तारा न रहा,
Wow,
कोई
wow.
दम न रहा, कोई सहारा न रहा.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We have Rohit Hangal also agreeing to the part of, I think, these
Lovely,
songs.
lovely to see Rohit.
Yeah,
But we met a few years ago. It hasn't
yeah,
been like Atif, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Atif, you haven't probably met for a long time. We'll all catch up once when you're here.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah. Uh, Now coming back to what holds the next few years. What will you be doing? What are you planning? I'm. I don't know.
So at some stage, and I, keep saying this at home, much to my family's irritation. I see myself completely moving out of any institutional affiliations after a point. I had done that in 2006 when I got into freelancing, and I had an amazing 5 to 6 years of being on my own, doing the things that I like doing and saying no to things that I didn't want to do, and so on. So you don't have that sort of a freedom in an institution. But then eventually I plan to move on from UNICEF and the UN, and I want to I want to do a lot more work on my writing. I have a few book ideas in mind. I want to communicate through my writing to large numbers of people. I want to get back to teaching, which has been my first love, actually. Now, whether I'll end up teaching at a school or a college or whatever it is, I'm not very sure. Uh, like you, Prithvi, I also have this dream of setting up a space which will look at wellness, well-being, uh, around this whole idea of books, songs, and conversations. So
Yeah.
there is music in it. There is a little bit of the intellectual stuff, reading, understanding books, but then very importantly, bringing friends together for conversations and a space where we can just forget for a while what stress is and do some things that are positive, that are enabling.
Oh, there's a
Uh,
place like this in Bangalore.
there must be
It's called
places
the
all over.
Finer Side.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, so I would definitely like to be more and more a part of the finer side. Uh, but then I'm sure that there are many more finer sides that we
Yeah.
need, because the numbers are large, and we
Yes.
need to reach out. We need to connect with more and more people. So I think those are some of the things that I have in mind, and it all looks very exciting, actually.
So one question before we let you go and end this evening is, how did this pandemic affect your work at remote places? Were you holed up in one place without being able to do something? I'm sure that all the efforts of so many years of setting up something could have gone to a standstill.
Well,
Frustration.
actually, quite the other way around in my case, at least, because I was holed up in Raipur when the lockdown happened, and the first lockdown was very brutal. So Raipur was like a ghost town, probably like what Bangalore was at that time. Um, but then, in the beginning days of the pandemic itself, I started moving out of the house because there were many organizations in Raipur which were who were working with migrant migrants basically who had
Migrants.
passed through the city. Thousands of people from all over the place, desperately walking in that scorching sun, sometimes barefoot. Many of them did not even have money with them. So Raipur had, we created a very large migrant camp in Raipur where we could provide shelter to these people. So I think within a week's time after the lockdown, I was busy working in that migrant worker camp. We all got together and set up a child care center within the camp, and so it ran. I think that camp ran up till. It was working up till middle of May, and then we closed it down. But that apart, I think whatever we did and whatever I did as part of UNICEF had to undergo a lot of design changes because schools were closed, so we could no
Yeah.
longer rely on closed schools. So instead, what we did was we embarked on a very interesting program which motivated youth in the communities of Chhattisgarh to work with children. So we called this the program called as we called it Seek, which means learning. So Seek program motivated something like 15 to 20,000 young boys and girls in their communities to work with children for a few hours in the week and teach them some foundational stuff, play around with them, tell them stories, and have fun generally. And I think that took a lot of my time. And I started traveling to the districts in April 2020 itself because the collectors were expecting some support. So I met, and of course, a lot of that was very risky because we didn't know the nature of the beast at that time.
Correct. Yeah.
But then one had to take those risks, and I think those risks were well taken. And in early childhood education, we did some very interesting work in terms of developing audios for parents. It's a very simple few-minute audios that they could listen to at home, and the Anganwadi worker would take them to the parents and play it out. So
I
many
remember
of
you had shared something which I had heard. Yeah, you had shared something with me. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, Prithvi, was that I became a radio jockey for about 45 days with Radio Mirchi. So they
Radio.
invited me to do some programs on radio. So I, along with Richa, who's the RJ in Raipur for Radio Mirchi, one of the RJs. So Richa and I co-hosted a show called Mirchi Ki Pathshala. So we did about 60 episodes there via radio, trying to reach out to parents. Of course, Radio Mirchi has a limited reach, but then it was worth the while, trying to do all of that. So there were many things like this that one did through the pandemic. And for me, actually, because I was alone in Raipur and my family was living in Bangalore, I needed to get to the office. So I utilized the office space completely. Even though they were the security guys sitting there, I would
Yeah.
go there, sit from morning to afternoon. There was absolutely nobody in the office, right? But those were some of the most interesting and productive times as well. And I think I was lucky because I had a supervisor who supported me, who understood what I was doing, and that was completely forthcoming. And I'm happy to say that UNICEF could do all of this because that's what we are meant to be doing, actually.
Yeah. Exactly. Wonderful. Wonderful. So my time's getting up, and as promised, within 1 hour we usually wind up the session. So, Giri, thanks. Do you have to say anything to all those people who are listening? Maybe many of your friends who are not popped in to say hi are still listening, and you can wave to them and say, give a message.
Yeah, I think, I have whatever little I've been able to do in this space over the last 30 years is because I've had wonderful colleagues, wonderful friends in various different organizations. And I think I would just like to use this opportunity to say a big thanks. There are quite a few people, I think, messaging in now. And thanks for understanding. Sometimes, when you're passionate about some things, you also get misunderstood. And a number of people who have been in that journey of mine, I have been part of their journeys. And I think and like you said, Prithvi, earlier on, had it not been for family support, especially stuff like when I was writing the book, when I was uh, working through the pandemic, and those kind of situations. So I think I derive my strength entirely from that community, and I'm really lucky. I'm also lucky because I've had the opportunity of working as a teacher, as a researcher, as a practitioner, as a as a freelance. I mean, one has had different vantage points. So one has looked at the same issues but sitting in different places. And I think that's an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing else but gratitude at this point of time.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that's what we should be happy and give to the world, saying we are so thankful for what we have got until now. And I hope
Absolutely.
we will be of use to others going forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the idea. That's the idea, ultimately.
So,
I do a lot of work with young people who come to me as interns. In fact, you were asking about how schools and UNICEF, if I can take a minute. So I have tried to encourage at least individually young people to come and intern with UNICEF and work on a certain, I did a lot of that in Chhattisgarh, for example. We had students from various universities come, and somewhere or the other they wanted to explore some part of themselves by doing something interesting. So we would then get them involved in our programs. They would carry a nice little certificate of appreciation at the end of it, and for them it mattered a lot, actually.
yeah,
So I would definitely want to give that back to many young people who are setting out and who want to do good work, actually.
wonderful. More good vibes pouring on. And
Yeah,
thank you,
Komal is
thank
a
you.
very dear friend from Gujarat
Yeah.
who I've known since the 90s. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Giri. Thank you for
Thanks,
giving your
Prithvi.
time
Very
out.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, you do your
Wonderful
vote of
having
thanks.
hosted me, and uh, look forward to being in touch with you and
Yes.
your friends at the finer side.
Yes, we will all get together again. We have renovated our space. We have brought in a water body. We have done some magic around to make it look even more livelier. It is lively as it is, and now we'll probably start our summer camps and theater classes. I mean, almost the pandemic is over for us, and people are out on the roads and the classes. So we look forward to a lot of people coming and joining these classes and benefiting from it. So
Wonderful. Yeah.
catch more of you offline at the venue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care. Take care, Prithvi.
Yep.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
everyone.